I'm very honored to be here this morning, and I thank you for your warm welcome that I've received so far. I was coming here several years ago, actually. In 2020, I came for a year here with my husband, and I was actually on the team that called people during the pandemic to make sure they were okay. So I might have talked to you during that time, but I'm thrilled to be here this morning. I recently participated in a seminar that was focused on young adults, who they call the next generation. These conversations that we have are always complex when we look at just one particular demographic, because more than having direct conversations with people in this demographic, we're looking more at their trends, where they're working, what they're spending their money on, where they're going. And we get some data around that. But the spiritual leaders that actually work with people in this group were invited to come and talk about some of the conversations we'd had with this age group, the next generation. This is what some of their trends have told us. When we look at 18 to 32-year-olds today, we see a generation grappling with unprecedented rates of anxiety. They often describe themselves as lacking trust, hope, and stable foundations. Agency is another area where many feel disconnected. Life seems to happen to them, and their desires and their thoughts and intentions can feel irrelevant. They state that they feel powerless to turn off their phone, not wanting to be disconnected from social media, not because it's distraction or what they're looking for, but what this showed us was that, and one of the participants said, "I want to know what everyone is thinking and doing all the time, so I can feel connected to someone." That desire for connection is extremely important in this age group. Experts observe that today's youth are disillusioned with the notion of simple formulas for success or happiness. They're keenly aware that things and people and intentions are very rarely what they seem to be. They are aware that there are no absolute truths that they have been able to trust in. But the currency of truth for this demographic is in-the-moment experiences. Experiences that impact them somehow. Yet despite all of this that we're understanding about this age group, we're witnessing a remarkable influx right now of 18 to 32-year-olds into churches of all types and all denominations, all across the U.S. Why? I think it's a good question. Well, we can't know for sure, as I've stated, that it's all based on our observations. But in a group of us, spiritual leaders who worked with this age group, we were talking about what we saw and what we have been hearing in conversations. And what we found for sure was a common thing we were finding was this desire not only for connection, but that connection can lead to something that will impact the individual. They're looking for impact, something that will connect them to something more significant than what's going on right now. My imagination and my hope, I guess, is that they see the church where they could find this connection to something more important, more significant, and bigger than themselves. And possibly having encounters with this would be able to impact them and change them. As I prepared for the gospel reading this morning, Luke 18, 9 through 14, something reminded me of that conversation we had in the seminar. Something in this passage seems to resonate deeply with the current search for spiritual meaning and belonging and seeking authentic connection to truth. And as I have read through it, again and again, it clicked for me the difference between the Pharisee in this passage and the tax collector. There is something here that happens to the tax collector that has resulted in a very different way of being in this world than we see in the Pharisee. Again, my imagination tells me, and I think this is what's going on in the passage, that this connection that the tax collector had was something that changed his life, something that was able to have impact, and that impact then allowed him to be more self-reflective, more understanding of who he is, more understanding of what mercy is available to him from God. And I believe that impact of that connection is what God has for all of us, in that connection we can have with God. The phrases in this parable that is before us this morning, of that change that happens in people and the result of it, is words like righteousness and justification. In the church, we can also call that experiences of spiritual formation. When we have had some kind of impact with something that we're trying to understand, that we're trying to be connected to. And the result of that is spiritual formation. Again, why is it that the youth, our next generation, are seeking that, are trying to find that, and maybe that could be in our midst right now? Something that's going on that we have that they might want, that they might be able to find. To look at this passage in that way, we have to see it as a context of availability of spiritual formation. Let's look a little bit more closely at this text. First of all, it's set up by Jesus very much like a joke. It's seen as a parody, right? Listen to this setup that Jesus gives us. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, one was a tax collector. We have jokes that sound a lot like that too. This is one of several places where Jesus uses humor as part of his teaching strategy to bring people in, to make it be something that all people can relate to. And what's funny here in this passage is that Jesus is using 2 of the worst characters in the community there for examples of spiritual formation, for examples of prayer, for examples of humility. Jesus is using the Pharisee and the tax collector. Neither were particularly admired by the original audience, but the distinction between them was clear. The Pharisee believed righteousness came from following formulas, rules that were set out before them, that they practiced over and over and over again to produce that kind of righteousness. Not actually trying to worship or be available for an encounter with God, but wanting to appear to do things right, wanting to appear to be one of the good guys, wanting to appear to be better than everyone else, appearing righteous. The logic is this: if I'm not as bad as that person, then I must be good. There is no proof here of spiritual connection or connection in a relationship that has caused an impact or caused some change to happen. This is very thin religion that the Pharisee is showing us in this passage. There's no substance. There's no connection to something bigger that we can see. There is just judgment and comparison and self-proclamation of righteousness. That's just like us sometimes. The tax collector, traditionally seen as a villain, surprises us by modeling true humility. Unlike the Pharisee, the tax collector admits his faults, recognizes his limited agency, and asks God for mercy. He is able to say, with his head down, "Have mercy on me, God, a sinner." He is being used here as proof that there is an available avenue of connection with God. If a tax collector can become righteous, anything can happen. Here is evidence that something has happened to this tax collector. And the impact that that has had has given him a whole new life perspective. He can go into the world in a totally different way than the Pharisee. Just like us, sometimes. I'm here today as a representative of Retreat Home. We are a nonprofit ministry that provides temporary housing for young, unhoused families in neighbors' homes, in our homes, in your homes. And as I have been talking about impact, I'd like to share with you that Retreat Home is absolutely known because of our impact, positive impact. Impact in the community. We are impacting the lives of young, unhoused family through the practices of hospitality. Impact on an urgent and wicked problem, that of homelessness, by presenting a sustainable solution. An impact on the lives who volunteer. Opportunities for connection and experiences and community building. Opportunities to have those in-the-moment experiences and be connected to people that actually the result of that is spiritual formation. One of our central offerings of spiritual growth are training workshops that are designed to foster authentic formation. In these workshops, we encourage participants to move beyond academic knowledge and to engage their whole selves in mission. We help our participants that come learn new skills, learn ways to interact with their neighbors so that we do no harm to ourselves and we do no harm to our neighbors. We are trying to beef up our skills around presenting hospitality. And you are invited to this opportunity. Christ Church is graciously hosting training workshops for all of us to come to. 2 Saturdays in November, November 15th and November 22nd. And there's more information about that outside in the foyer. Okay, so I've spoken about young adults. I've spoken about the parody or the parable that we were looking at this morning, and I've talked about Retreat Home. And I'm hoping that you're wondering how they're all connected. And I believe it's through the very first sentence of this passage. This passage begins with a wake-up call. Jesus told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. Unfortunately, this is a description of us all. Jesus told this parable to those who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt, just like us sometimes. We are not exempt from practicing very thin religion, and when we do, we can slip into regarding others with contempt. All these things that we say and we think when we come up against people that are different from us, people that somehow affront us, sometimes they annoy us, sometimes they make us uncomfortable. We can easily slip into that way of regarding others with contempt that Jesus is talking about here. And that reason that we're not exempt from this is because it's part of the human condition. And that is why Jesus is addressing us all as we start this passage in this parable. Because it is part of the human condition, we always have to be aware and ready to resist it, to come up against something different. The Pharisee was not able to do this. The Pharisee continued to practice thin religion. trying to do the things, right, that made him righteous, appearing righteous, not looking for those connections, not looking for that impact. The tax collector, on the other hand, was fully himself, realizing that he needed to have that connection, to have that impact, to have those in-the-moment experiences when he was open and ready to be changed into something different. These opportunities for spiritual formation are around us all the time. We must start engaging in them so we can have that impact and start having those changes. So then we can go out into the world and become more like that tax collector as we're interacting with our neighbors. Opportunities for this kind of spiritual formation experiences are right outside. We know that outside is important because Jesus sets up the parable again as the Pharisee being in the temple, but the tax collector was far off. The tax collector was on the outside. We have to take our experiences and our knowledge and our gift of being in community from the inside and be ready to take it to the outside. That's where we're going to find those opportunities of spiritual formation. So my invitation for you to come to some of our workshops is to learn how to be more prepared for those opportunities when we go outside and we start encountering our neighbors, and how we can build community around that. So please come, please feel invited, and please know that we're always just that one step away from being able to have that connection and that impact that can change us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.